My name is Daniel Alvarez. I am Assistant Professor of Theology here at Pentecostal Theological Seminary. A lot of people ask me a lot of times, why do I need theology? Why do I need to do this? They're like, why are you going to study? Why are you going to the cemetery? And I always like to tell pastors, well, we have to think about what we believe. Ultimately, what we do, what we believe, affects the way we practice ministry. And ultimately, it affects the way I relate to people. It all comes down to our ideas of who God is. Everybody has an implicit theology. Everybody has a way of thinking about God. Everybody has a way. I have friends that are sinners, and they tell me, I think as soon as I set foot in the church, I'm going to burst out into flames. That's a theology. That communicates a lot of their idea about God, about God's, His judgment, and where they are personally, their idea of humanity. Like humanity is totally evil, totally devoid of God, and I'm just going to burn. And I think a lot of what pastors do a lot of the time is when they're tending sheep, a lot of times they're correcting and working through people's theology to bring them to a healthier understanding of who God is, and to bring them into an understanding of God's perfect love, and God's justice, and God's mercy, and God's grace, and all these things that we need to talk about God. And one of the things that I think is very important is the doctrine of Christ, who Jesus Christ is. Jesus is fully God, and Jesus is fully human. And in talking about these things, a lot of people in the ancient world, they thought, well, there's no way God can relate to human beings, so he cannot be human at all. And a lot of times, other people collapse to one extreme, and then the other extreme that people collapse to is, well, Jesus, he's just a human being that was merely adopted by God. And if Jesus wasn't really God, he couldn't have died for my sins. And if Jesus was fully God and he couldn't relate to humanity in any ways, then there's no way that he can bear the price for my sins. There's no way that I can relate to him. Because there's an extreme separation of what it means to be God and divine, and an extreme separation of my human predicament. We have God, the creator of everything, who comes down to human level, and we have a fancy word for it, is condescends to our level, and who comes to us and tells us that we are not too far off. So in Jesus Christ, we have an idea of who God is. We have an idea. We even have a pastoral model to follow, to walk along with our people, to be shepherds, to be people who walk together with Christ in this world and in this nature. And the beautiful thing about this is that God comes to us, and in a Pentecostal understanding, or every person, every individual, even sinners, must come to a personal encounter with God. And in Jesus, his humiliation, how he became human, we have this understanding of God coming to us, coming to our rescue, coming to us, and coming to rescue humanity, coming for us all, and we can have an encounter. In my humanity, I don't need to withdraw and go meditate in the woods. I don't need to go hug trees. Jesus is present in our services. Jesus is present in our daily walk. Jesus is present in all these places that we are, and we can have a personal encounter with him. He can be known. But in the Christian faith, we have a Christ who became human, became incarnate, took on elements of culture. I believe that Jesus Christ had a sense of humor. I believe he walked with his disciples. I believe that as they walked from Jerusalem to Galilee, they would joke. They would joke with one another, tell jokes, and then Christ would also confront them in their reality. Especially when Christ walks through Samaria. I mean, that's one of my favorite stories in the Bible. And he goes and he encounters a Samaritan woman. Everybody's like, wait, Jesus, what are you doing? And he talks with one of the most despised and rejected persons in society, and enters their reality. And probably the most important reason is to know that Jesus Christ was human, fully divine, is for our redemption. What happens at the cross? And we can know in his work in the cross that we are free from sin. We can have victory over sin. My expectations now for the future is that my humanity, like Christ was free from sin, my humanity, I can also, there's hope in this kind of idea about God, because he was able to live a sinless life I can also work and I can also move towards living a sinless life in this world.